You don't remember falling asleep. One moment you were somewhere loud. Lights, bodies, music that felt like it was coming from inside your chest. And then nothing. And then this. A ceiling you don't recognize. Gray morning light pressing through a curtain. Your hands resting on your stomach like someone arranged them there. You lie still. Something is different. Not wrong. Different. 12 hours ago, you didn't know who you were, not really. You knew your name, your job, the specific brand of anxiety you carried into every room. You knew the voice in your head that never quite went quiet. The one that kept score, kept count, kept reminding you of every way you were slightly, persistently, not enough. 12 hours ago, someone passed you something small. You hesitated. Of course you hesitated. You had the warnings memorized, the posters, the lectures, your mother's voice doing what your mother's voice always did. But everyone around you looked fine. More than fine. They looked like people who had discovered a room in a house they'd lived in their whole lives. A room that had always been there, warm and lit, and somehow they'd just never opened the door. So you opened it? What happened next wasn't what the warnings described. There was no spiral, no darkness. What happened was the opposite of darkness. Your brain released more dopamine in 20 minutes than it had in the previous 20 years. More than your first kiss? More than every achievement stacked on top of each other. More than anything you had ever chased and briefly caught. The noise stopped. The voice went quiet. The weight you didn't even know you were carrying, gone. For the first time in your life, you felt like the person you were always trying to be. Here's what no one tells you about that moment. The feeling was real, not a trick, not a lie. The relief was genuine, the joy was genuine, the sense of finally arriving somewhere. All of it, completely real. It just wasn't yours to keep. Your body remembers everything, not the way your mind remembers, not like a photograph or a story you tell yourself. Your cells remember. The chemistry remembers. And from this morning forward, without you agreeing to it, without you signing anything, your brain has a new reference point for what okay feels like. And okay will never feel okay again. This is not a story about that night. This is a story about every night after it. You have rules. This is important. This is the thing that separates you from the people you've seen on documentaries. The ones with hollow eyes and shaking hands. Those people have no rules. Those people can't stop. You have rules and I follow them. And that is the entire difference between a person with a problem and a person who simply knows how to enjoy their life. The rules are very clear. Never on a weekday. Never alone. Never before evening. Never more than twice in a single week. Never when you have something important the next morning. Never when you're already in a bad place emotionally. That one is practically responsible. That one shows self-awareness. You recite them the way other people recite affirmations. The first rule to bend is the weekday one. Thursday technically shares more DNA with Friday than with Monday. Anyone who has worked a full week understands this. Wednesday follows. Not as a habit, just as a response to a particularly brutal afternoon. A single exception. The rule isn't broken, it's paused. The alone rule is next. You tell yourself this one doesn't count because you're not using to escape something. You're using to unwind. There's a difference. Escape is running from something. Unwinding is simply decompressing. The same way other people pour a glass of wine after work, except you're not dependent on anything. You could stop whenever you wanted. You just don't want to right now because right now this is working. Here is what you don't know yet. every person who has ever sat where you're eventually going to sit, and there have been millions of them, across every country, every income level, every personality type, every single one of them had rules. The rules were different for each of them. The timeline was different. But the architecture was identical, a system of limits constructed specifically so that the person building it could look at it and say, "This is proof I am not that person." The rules don't protect you. The rules are the last thing you do before the rules stop mattering. 40 million of Americans are reading their own rules right now. They just don't call them that. Neither did you. Nobody tells you about the gray, not the dramatic version, not losing your job, not the intervention, not the moment everything collapses at once. That version comes later. What nobody warns you about is the quiet version, the version that happens on a Tuesday, the version that looks, from the outside, like absolutely nothing. Monday arrives and the world is slightly less saturated than it was on Friday. The colors are the same colors. The people are the same people, but something in the signal has been turned down, like someone found a dial you didn't know existed and moved it 3 degrees to the left. Not enough to call it suffering, just enough to call it flat. By Wednesday, you are doing math in your head that you don't acknowledge as math. You are not counting hours. You are simply aware in the background the way you're aware of a sound in another room. That Friday exists, and that Friday is a certain distance away, and that the distance is currently 41 hours and closing. You start using alone on a Thursday night, not because something terrible happened, because nothing did, because you sat in your apartment after a meal you barely tasted, watching something on a screen you weren't really watching, and the silence had a texture to it. Not painful, just present. Just there. Just this low persistent hum of not quite right that you knew exactly how to turn off. So you turned it off. You don't mark it as a line crossed. You don't mark it as anything. You clean up, you go to bed, you wake up Friday and go to work, and nobody knows and nothing has changed. But something has changed. The money starts disappearing in the language of ordinary things. Not in one dramatic transfer, in the texture of small decisions. There's a coat you saw in October that you didn't buy. A flight home for a birthday you rebooked, then canceled. A dinner with an old friend you kept meaning to reschedule. You didn't spend that money on anything you can name. It went somewhere. You know where. You don't do the math because the math would require you to look at something directly. And looking at things directly is something you have quietly stopped doing. Your friends notice something they can't name. Not that you're using, not that anything is wrong, just that you seem elsewhere. Like you are physically present in every conversation, but there is a half-second delay, a slight lag between what's happening and your response to it. They don't say anything, neither do you. One morning, you stand at the bathroom mirror, not to check how you look, but to check whether you still recognize the person looking back. You do. Barely. This is the most dangerous level. Not because you're drowning. Because you still feel like you're swimming. Because everything is still technically fine, and technically fine is the most convincing lie the drift tells you. There is a death in every addiction story that nobody attends. No flowers. No service. No one standing in a parking lot afterward eating sandwiches and saying he was so young, or she had so much ahead of her. Just a person, gradually, becoming someone else, and the original person quietly stepping back, then further back, then gone. The people around you start using the past tense. Not about you, never directly about you, but you catch it. He used to be so driven. She was so funny. Like, actually funny. Not just laughing at everything funny. I don't know, he's different lately. They say it to each other, not to you, because saying it to you would require naming something none of you are ready to name. Your oldest friend calls on a Sunday. You let it go to voicemail. Not because you don't want to talk to her, because the version of you she is calling for doesn't live here anymore, and you don't know how to explain that, and it is easier to send a text that says, "Sorry, crazy week, let's catch up soon and then not catch up soon," and let the distance grow in the comfortable way that distance grows when you are the one choosing it. Think about who you were 5 years ago, what you wanted, what you were working toward. The specific shape of the future you were building, not perfectly, not without doubt, but building. A version of yourself you were in conversation with, checking in on, trying to become. When did you stop talking to that person? You didn't decide to become someone different. That's the thing no one understands from the outside. There was no moment of choosing. It happened the way water reshapes stone. Not by force, but by presence. By showing up every day, slowly, patiently, until the original shape is gone and what remains looks nothing like what was there before. And the water doesn't even notice because the water's just doing what water does. The person you used to want to become is not coming back. Not because they can't. Because you have spent months now becoming someone whose only conversation is with the next dose. And that conversation leaves no room for anyone else. This is the first death. You are still breathing. You are still walking around, still showing up, still performing the rituals of a functioning life. But the person who had dreams that weren't about this, that person has already been buried. And the strange, terrible thing is, you didn't even feel it happen. And the part that comes next, and the part your body is about to introduce you to, it makes everything so far feel like a warning you were given in a language you didn't yet speak. You wake up wrong. Not sick the way you know sick. Not fever, not flu, not something with a name you can tell a doctor. This is a different category of wrong entirely. This starts in the bones, not in the muscles, not in the stomach, in the bones themselves, and radiates outward like something structural has been compromised. Like the scaffolding holding your body together has been quietly removed overnight, and what's left is just weight with nothing to support it. Your hands are not shaking dramatically. They are trembling in the way a phone vibrates in a pocket. Subtle, persistent, impossible to ignore once you notice it. Your brain is saying one word, not asking, saying more. Here is what is actually happening inside you, stated as plainly as possible. Your brain has a system, ancient, efficient, non-negotiable, designed to ensure your survival. This system drove your ancestors toward food when they were hungry, toward water when they were thirsty, toward shelter when they were cold. It is the most powerful motivational architecture the human body contains. It does not negotiate. It does not respond to reason. It responds to need. Your brain has reclassified the substance as a need, not a want, not a preference, a need, filed alongside water and oxygen and warmth, processed by the same circuitry that keeps you alive. The city of your mind has been rezoned. Old roads, toward ambition, toward connection, toward the future you used to imagine, have been closed. New roads, efficient and direct, lead to one place only. This is not weakness. Let that land for a moment, because you will hear the opposite of this for the rest of your life from people who have never felt what you are feeling right now. This is not a character flaw. This is not what happens to people who lack discipline or intelligence or moral fiber. This is biology executing a protocol it was never designed to handle. The system worked perfectly. It just got pointed at the wrong thing. But biology doesn't pay your rent. The morning dose is no longer about the feeling. You have not chased the feeling in weeks. You know now, with the clarity of someone who has run the experiment enough times, that the feeling is gone. that it left somewhere around the 3rd month and has not come back and will not come back. The morning dose is about function, about stopping the trembling, about making the bones feel like bones again instead of exposed wire, about getting from here to noon. Scientists put rats in cages with 2 levers. One dispensed food. One dispensed cocaine. The rats chose cocaine until they starved, every time, without exception. You are not a rat. Your brain is running the same program. 3 in the morning. You are sitting on the bathroom floor, not dramatically, not collapsed, just sitting, because the bed felt too far away and the floor is at least something solid. The tiles are cold. You notice this. You notice it the way you notice weather now, as information, not sensation, because sensation requires a self to receive it, and you are not entirely sure where yours went. You are not thinking about getting high. You are thinking about getting to morning. There is a last day of pretending. You don't know it's the last day while it's happening. It looks like every other day. The alarm, the clothes, the commute, the performance of being someone who has things under control. But there is a meeting that morning where someone asks you a direct question and you open your mouth and the answer isn't there. Not delayed, not slow, simply absent. Like reaching for something on a shelf and finding the shelf empty and not remembering when you stopped putting things there. Your boss looks at you for 2 seconds longer than normal. You look back. You both know. Neither of you say it. 3 weeks later, you are cleaning out your desk at 4 p.m. on a Friday while the office empties around you. 3 warnings. A process you apparently went through, but can only partially reconstruct. You carry a box to the elevator and press the button and stand there and feel. Nothing. Not grief. Not shame. Not relief. Nothing. The nothing is the most frightening thing that has happened to you so far, and you don't even have the capacity to be frightened by it, which is its own kind of horror. The note is on the kitchen table when you get home. She didn't leave dramatically. No screaming, no thrown objects, no scene you can reframe as someone else's fault. Just a folded piece of paper and a set of keys and a space in the closet where her things were. You read the note. You read it again. You read it a 3rd time, and somewhere very far inside you, in a room you haven't been able to access in months, something moves. A flicker. A recognition. The faint signal of the person you used to be, registering what this means. Then you pick up your phone and call your dealer. The flicker goes out. This is what the substance has become now. Not pleasure, not relief, not even escape. It is a delete button. Feel something painful. Delete. Feel something real. Delete. The surgery is quick and efficient and leaves no scar because there's no longer enough of you present to scar. The stealing starts small, the way everything starts small. $20 from a wallet left on a counter. A returned item you didn't purchase. Something borrowed that was never going to be returned. You tell yourself these are temporary measures, bridge financing, a problem you will correct when things stabilize. Things do not stabilize. The amounts grow. The sources grow closer, not strangers now, not stores. People who know your name. People who would have given you money if you had asked. You stole from them because asking would have required telling the truth, and the truth, by this point, is something you have not been in the same room with in a very long time. The last thing you pawn is a watch, not expensive, not meaningful to anyone else. But your grandfather put it on your wrist the day you graduated and told you time was the only thing nobody could give back to you once it was gone. You get $80 for it, you spend it the same afternoon. This is not the bottom. You need to understand that clearly before we continue. What you just lost, the job, the relationship, the last object that connected you to the person you were raised to become, this is not the bottom. The bottom is when you stop being able to feel the difference. There is a last time for everything. You don't know it's the last time while it's happening. That's the cruelest design of it. The last time you sleep in a bed, you just sleep. The last time you have an address, you just have an address. The last time someone who loves you knows where you are somewhere, and they know it. And neither of you understands that this is the last time that will be true. The apartment goes first, then the friend's couch, then the motel room at the edge of the city where the carpet smelled like decades of other people's bad decisions. And the television only received 4 channels, and you watched all 4 of them without seeing any of them. Then the motel runs out too because money runs out. Because money has been running out for a long time, and there's nothing left to sell and no one left to ask. Now you are here, under a bridge on a Tuesday afternoon. Not at night. That would be more cinematic, more consistent with the version of this story you used to watch from a safe distance and feel sad about. It is afternoon. The sun is completely ordinary. 40 feet above you, traffic moves at the speed of people who have somewhere to be. Somebody is listening to music in their car. Somebody is arguing on their phone. The entire apparatus of normal life is continuing, as it always continues, at a volume you can hear but can no longer reach. You have overdosed twice. The first time, you woke up in a hospital and a paramedic was looking at you with an expression you recognized. Not pity exactly, more like the exhaustion of someone who has had the same conversation 100 times and knows how it ends. You need to get help. You nodded. You meant it. In the way you meant everything now. Partially, provisionally, with the part of your brain that was still capable of meaning things. You used again within 6 hours of leaving. The second time you don't remember clearly. There are gaps. This frightens you less than it should. Your mother came to find you once. You didn't know she was looking. She stood 15 feet away on a sidewalk and looked at you and did not cry. This is the thing that stays with you. Not the words she said, not the way she looked older than you remembered, but the fact that she did not cry. The worried crying had stopped somewhere along the way. What was on her face instead was something quieter and more final. The expression of someone who is already grieving, who has moved without telling you from hoping to mourning. She looked at you like you were already gone. Maybe you are. You are not thinking about the substance right now. This is new, strange and new. You are thinking about tomorrow. And then you realize, sitting on the ground under this bridge in the middle of an ordinary afternoon with the sound of normal life continuing above you, that you are not certain you have a tomorrow. Not eventually, not in the abstract, soon. The kind of soon that has a shape to it, a proximity you can feel. You are going to die here, not dramatically, not with anyone watching, just here, on this ground. Having moved through the world for however many years you moved through it, and the only evidence you will leave behind is pain in the people who tried to love you and couldn't reach you. And then you hear footsteps. It is your mother. She has been looking for you for 6 hours. You will learn this later. The calls she made, the places she went, the version of the city she walked through, that you never knew existed because you were the one who made her learn it. She found you because she refused to stop looking. That is the entire explanation. No dramatic instinct, no miraculous timing. Just a woman who decided that 6 hours was not enough and kept going. She sits down next to you on the ground. She doesn't say anything for a moment. She doesn't recoil. She doesn't hand you a pamphlet or recite a speech she prepared in the car. She just sits down on the concrete in her good coat next to the person you have become and stays there. Then there is a room. You don't fully remember the sequence between the bridge and the room. There are gaps, soft edges, moments that exist in your memory as impressions rather than events. But there is a room, and in the room are people you recognize, and people you have wronged, and people who by any reasonable accounting should have stopped showing up for you a long time ago. They are here anyway. They read letters. You hear your name in other people's mouths. Not the name of what you've become, but the name of who you were, the person they are, still, somehow, holding space for. Your brother's voice breaks on a word. An old friend you haven't spoken to in 2 years describes a version of you that you had forgotten existed. Your mother doesn't read a letter. She just looks at you, that's all. She just looks at you like you are still there. Something cracks, not breaks. Cracks. A fissure in something you built specifically to not crack. A wall you constructed from rationalization and denial, and the daily practice of not looking directly at anything real. Through the crack comes everything you have been refusing to feel for longer than you can accurately measure. The shame, the grief, the staggering weight of what you have cost everyone in this room. You say yes, not because you believe it will work, not because you are ready or strong or certain of anything. You say yes because you are sitting in a room full of people who should have given up and didn't. And the only thing you have left to offer them is this one word. They take you to rehab that night. Your last thought before the doors close is not about the substance. It is not about withdrawal or statistics or whether you're going to make it. It is smaller than that. More tired than that. Maybe I'll finally get some rest. You don't choose recovery in this moment. You choose not to end here. That is not the same thing. But it is enough for tonight, with this much wreckage behind you and this much uncertainty ahead. Not ending here is enough. Day one is not dramatic. This surprises you. You expected something cinematic, the body in full revolt, the fever dream hallucinations, the kind of suffering that at least has the decency to match the scale of what caused it. Instead, it is just hourly. That is the only word for it. Time stops functioning as time and becomes instead a series of individual hours, each one a complete and separate endurance event, each one requiring the full allocation of everything you have left just to get through it and arrive at the next one. Your skin feels like it belongs to someone else. Your bones ache from the inside in that specific way you now know better than you know almost anything. The withdrawal signature, the body's invoice for what you borrowed and spent and cannot repay. You shake, you sweat through sheets. You cannot sleep but cannot stay awake, drifting instead through a gray middle territory that offers none of the benefits of either. Your brain makes its case clearly and without shame. This would stop if you used one more time. Just once. Just to get through this part. You could start over tomorrow from a slightly better position with this particular suffering behind you. You do not use, not today. The nurses check on you with the calm efficiency of people who have witnessed this specific war many times, and know that their job is not to fight it for you but to make sure you survive it. It gets better, one of them tells you, on day 2, when better seems like a word from a language you no longer speak. You don't believe her. You file it away anyway. Day 3 is worse than day 2. This seems impossible and is true. Somewhere around day 7, something shifts. Not dramatically. Nothing in recovery happens dramatically, you are learning. Just a morning where the trembling has quieted to background noise, and the nausea has loosened its grip by a few degrees, and you become aware, for the first time in longer than you can accurately calculate, of a window, actual light, actual sky. The world outside continuing in its ordinary way, and you still in it, and the windshield you have been looking through for years, finally, incrementally beginning to clear. The physical part is ending. The cravings come like waves, sudden, total, arriving without warning in the middle of group therapy or a meal or a conversation about something completely unrelated. Your mouth waters. Your heart accelerates. Your brain produces the memory of the feeling with a fidelity that seems almost cruel. Not a faded copy, but the original, full resolution, every detail intact. Just once, just to remember, no one would know. You call your sponsor. You go to a meeting. You do whatever it takes to stay inside the wave without being pulled under. And then, always, every time, without exception, the wave passes. This is the only thing recovery actually teaches you in the beginning. Not strength, not clarity, not the reasons to stay sober. Just this. The wave always passes. You survive it once, then you survive it again. Then again. The waves don't get smaller at first, but you get better at knowing they will end. That knowledge is everything. 10 years later, you are making coffee. This is the whole story, not the bridge, not the hospital, not the room full of people reading letters. This, a Tuesday morning, a kettle. The specific sound of water coming to a boil in a quiet apartment that belongs to you, that has your name on the lease, where people know where you are. Sunlight coming through a window at an angle that means nothing, except that the sun is up and you are up, and both of these things are true at the same time. You are still an addict. This is not a tragedy. This is just accurate. The disease did not leave when you did. It did not get tired of waiting or decide to move on to someone more promising. It is patient in a way that nothing else in your life has ever been patient. Doing what your sponsor once described as push-ups in the corner. Getting stronger in the silence. Waiting for the moment you forget to take it seriously. You do not forget. You carry the past the way you carry a scar. Not as an open wound, not as something that requires daily attention, but as a part of the landscape of your body that you are aware of, that you can touch if you choose to, that tells a true story about something that happened and did not kill you. The cravings still come, less frequently now, quieter. Sometimes on good days and the best days even, your brain will surface the memory without warning. Not the overdoses, not the bridge, not your mother's face when she had run out of tears. The first night, the feeling. The door opening onto that warm, lit room. You remember it completely. And then you remember everything after it. That is the whole mechanism. That is the entire technology of staying alive. You remember all of it, not selectively, not the edited version, the entire archive, and the weight of the after is always, just barely, heavier than the pull of the before. People ask you sometimes what it was like. You think about how to explain it. You think about what it would take to describe a color to someone who has never seen it. Not just the name of the color, but the experience of it, the way it sits in the eye. You can give them the name. You can tell them it existed. You cannot give them the seeing of it. It was like being handed the answer to a question you didn't know you were asking. You tell them. And then spending everything you had and everything you were trying to hold on to it. And losing anyway. They nod. They don't understand. They can't. But you understand. You remember every level. The gift that wasn't yours to keep. The rules that were really just permission. The drift you mistook for swimming. The funeral no one attended. The rewiring you couldn't feel happening. The collapse you saw coming and couldn't stop. The ground that was colder than you expected. The fork you almost didn't reach. The fire of those first days. And this ordinary Tuesday, this kettle, this light. You are here. Tomorrow you will have to choose again. And the day after that, and every day after that for the rest of your life. There is no finish line. There is no morning you wake up, cured, free, done with the work. There is only today. Today you didn't use. Today you were present. Today, the people who love you know where you are and you let them. Today you made coffee and watched the light move across the floor and felt something you would not have believed possible from the ground under that bridge. Ordinary, just ordinary. Unremarkably, quietly, completely ordinary. You spent years trying to feel extraordinary. You nearly died trying to feel extraordinary. It turns out ordinary was the thing worth surviving for. If you recognize any of these levels, in yourself, in someone you love, leave it in the comments. Not to perform it, not because you have to, just so you know you're not the only one who has ever stood at one of these doors wondering what was on the other side. You're not. You never were.